Okay, we're going to do another reading about Mendel and Punnett squares. So, give an example of a feature of pea plants that Mendel observed and list the traits associated with that feature. Hint: features are general things all members of a species share, and traits are the specific examples of those things. Larkies have 4 relevant features: appendage length, eye color, fur pattern, and tail shape. Red and gray eyes are the traits associated with the eye color feature. Okay, so we need a feature of pea plants and the traits associated with that feature. Mendel and Punnett squares. What was Mendel's breakthrough? What did this Austrian monk observe in his garden that established the foundation of modern genetics and the study of heredity? Gregor Mendel, 1822 to 1884, was a keen observer of nature. He observed that garden peas have lots of variations from plant to plant. He focused his experiments on several features of the pea plant. These included flower color, seed color, and plant height. Okay, feature, seed color, associated traits. What type of seed colors were there? Mendel chose plants with 2 possible traits for these features. It's kind of a good idea just to have 2 traits to keep track of. Some plants produced purple flowers and some produced white flowers. Some plants produced green seeds and some produced yellow seeds. Okay? Green and yellow. The traits for seed color. Some plants were tall and others were short. Mendel decided to look for patterns in these traits over multiple generations. Mendel patiently bred and observed the garden pea plant, Pisum sativum, I think. These plants were ideal for his experiments because they grow and reproduce very quickly. Okay, I think that was one of my reasons why I thought he did that, which I stole from you guys. Methods. Mendel designed 3 stages for his experiment. Stage 1. Mendel raised several generations of pea plants. He used pollen from a plant to pollinate other flowers on that same plant. He planted seeds from the mature plants, raising generations of self-pollinated plants. After a few generations, they bred pure. Breeding pure means all offspring have exactly the same traits as the parents. In Mendel's case, tall plants produced seed that resulted in only tall offspring. Short plants produced seed that resulted in only short offspring. These pure breeding tall or pure breeding short plants became the stage 2 parents. Mendel identified them as the parent generation, pea generation. He wanted these ones to start it off with his studies. Stage 1, self-pollination. The pea plant can self-pollinate. Pollen from one flower can pollinate other flowers on the same plant. The seeds from these plants grew into Mendel's stage 2 parent plants, the parent generation. Short pea plant, tall pea plant. Okay. What is the other questions? Here we go. Explain the difference between self-pollinating and cross-pollinating. Well, let's find out. Stage 2. Mendel carefully cross-pollinated tall parent plants with short parent plants. He placed pollen from tall plants on the flowers of short plants and pollen from short plants on the flowers of tall plants. Mendel called the first offspring from the pea generation the first filial generation. Filial means sons and daughters. He identified them as the F1 hybrid generation. When Mendel cross-pollinated the pea generation to produce an F1 generation, all the F1 plants were tall. The short trait disappeared. Ooh, mystery in the garden. Stage 2, pea generation cross-pollination. Tall ones pollinating short ones pollinating tall ones. He prevented natural self-pollination by removing stamens from the flowers of certain plants, controlling variables from his experiment. He then controlled cross-pollination by dusting pollen by hand between different plants. And the results was, when you mix tall and short, you get tall, 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 tall. No short plants. All right, so now we have to figure out what self-pollination and cross-pollination is. Self-pollination is, let's see. is when a plant fertilizes its own flowers, and cross-pollination is when one plant fertilizes a different plant. In the picture on page 31, figure out what the colors white and gray each mean. Okay. Oh, you know what? Just back it up a little bit here. What's happening? These cute cursors are cool, but then I don't know where to grab stuff. Stage 3 results. F2 generation. Okay, we talked about those ones. They're all tall. Oh, wait, this is different. Self-pollinating the plants from the F1 generation resulted in some tall plants and some short plants. The short plants reappeared in the F2 generation. Okay, so the P, they were one of each. The F, they were all tall. Oh yeah, here's the key. Gray means tall and white means short. Number of gray, number of white in the F2 generation. Okay, not the P, not the F1, but the F2. Let's count the whites. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16 white ones. How many gray ones in F2? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48. Okay, 48 to 16. And that reduces to 3, 2, 1. Okay, because 48 divided by 16 is 3. Mendel knew that the F1 pea plants had one tall factor and one short factor. When Mendel saw that no F1 pea plants were short, what did he conclude about the tall plant factor? Okay. Mendel pollinated each plant from the F1 generation with its own pollen. The offspring were called the F2 generation. When he pollinated all of the tall F1 plants with their own pollen, some plants in the F2 generation were tall and some were short. The trait of short height disappeared in the F1 generation and reappeared in the F2 generation. Here's a diagram of Mendel's results. Count the number of short and tall plants. I did. What ratio did you find in the F2 generation? It was 3 to 1. When Mendel counted the number of tall and short plants in the F2 generation, he found that the ratio of tall to short plants was consistently close to 3 to 1. How could 1 out of 4 plants be short when short plants were absent from the F1 generation? How did these tall plants make short plants? Mendel's painstaking experiments established that traits pass from parents to offspring in mathematically predictable ways. Awesome. Okay. Mendel's breakthrough. Children may inherit traits that are expressed in their grandparents, but not in their parents. It's called skipping a generation, right? Mendel's observation of dominant and recessive alleles explains how traits can skip a generation. I've heard that twins skip generations. Mendel's breakthrough. Mendel had a breakthrough idea. He reasoned that offspring inherit something that determines their traits. He called the inherited thing a factor. These factors are now called genes. Mendel concluded that genes come in pairs. Each member of a gene pair is called an allele. An organism has 2 alleles for each trait, one from the mother and one from the father. Mendel used the terms dominant and recessive to describe what he observed. When he crossed a pure tall plant, both alleles for tall height, and a pure short plant, both alleles for short height, all the F1 offspring received one tall plant allele and one short plant allele. Only the tall trait appeared, So he called the tall plant allele dominant. What did he conclude about the tall plant factor? He concluded the tall plant factor was dominant because when a plant had one of each factor, gene coding for tall and gene coding for short. Should I say allele? Yes. Let's get specific and impress the teacher. Only the tall trait showed. Okay. In stage 1, self-pollination, Mendel was able to breed peas until they were true breeding. He created both true breeding short plants and true breeding tall plants. What do you think the genotypes of these two pea plants were? Talked about true breeding. Where was that? Breeding pure means all offspring have exactly the same traits as the parent. So tall plants produce seed that only result in tall offspring, and shorts produce seed that only result in short offspring. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and say that if it only makes tall plants, it only can give dominant alleles. If this one can only make short plants, it's only going to be able to give recessive alleles. And genotype is the 2-letter code. And you could also say homozygous dominant or homozygous recessive if you want to be #extra. And why not? If a trait or factor is deemed to be recessive, that means it will only show up as a trait in the offspring if what gets passed on by each parent. Okay, to get a recessive trait, the offspring has to get, a recessive trait like gray eyes, bare tail, or long legs. You have to get a recessive allele from each parent. Do a Punnett square for the offspring of parent pea plants that each have the genotype big T, little t, heterozygous, for the feature of height. Okay, big T, little t for one parent. The other parent goes on this side, big T, little t. Type your parent alleles in the yellow spaces and the offspring's alleles in the pink spaces. Okay, so parent plant, they can either make pollen with a tall plant factor or a short plant factor. And then the flower, I need to study the flower parts, but sperm and egg, one of each allele. How will they compare? So you take the big T and you bring it across both of these boxes, and the little t and you bring it over here. And then you got to take this big T and bring it down into both boxes. Tradition states that you put the big letter first. Little t's, you bring it down into this column. Okay. What fraction of these offspring would be short? Well, this is tall, this is tall, this is tall, this is short. 1 out of 4, what's fraction? I can do that. 1 out of 4 would be short. Okay, summarize the 2 important principles in heredity. Okay. Mendel reasoned that the short plant allele was still there, but was hidden by the dominant tall plant allele. He called the short plant allele recessive. The recessive trait would appear only if the offspring inherited the recessive allele from both parents. Oh, we just answered that question. In the F2 generation, That combination would happen one time for about every 3 dominant combinations, explaining the 3-to-1 ratio of tall to short plants. 3-to-1. Okay, there's that. In 1865, Mendel announced that organisms pass units of information to their offspring during reproduction. This inheritance allows the offspring to develop like their parents. He didn't know what the units were, but he understood how they acted. Without being able to see them, Mendel had discovered the existence of genes and described how they work. What a cool guy. Genes and Punnett squares. By the early 1900s, chromosomes had been discovered. Walter S. Sutton, 1877 to 1916, was the first scientist to recognize that chromosomes carried Mendel's factors. In 1905, Reginald Punnett, 1875 to 1967, published a textbook called Mendelism that introduced genetics to the public. It's nice to give people credit for the work they do. He also made a model that predicts the probability of possible genotypes and the phenotypes, the appearance of the traits they produce. Punnett's model is still used. It is a simple 2-coordinate system called the Punnett square. Let's use Mendel's pea plant discoveries to see how it works. Use the letter lowercase t to represent the genes that determine plant height. The letter T. Capital T represents the dominant allele and lowercase t the recessive allele. Dominant, recessive. Mendel's pure tall pea plants had 2 dominant alleles. They're pure because that's all they can give. The pure short pea plants had 2 recessive alleles, pure because that's all they can give. Both plants were homozygous, same big, same little, for the height feature. This means the alleles were identical. The tall plant was homozygous dominant, and the short plant homozygous recessive. So they're setting up our Punnett square. Now I want some peas. Filling in the squares with the alleles produces 4 possible offspring. Each offspring has only one possible combination of alleles, big T, little t. And there they all are. Because all the offspring have a dominant allele from mom, they all have the tall plant factor, they all have the tall plant phenotype. This is dominant, so this trait is going to be tall. The genotypes of these plants are heterozygous, one of each. Dominant allele, recessive allele. The gene is represented by 1 dominant and 1 recessive allele. Let's see what happened when Mendel pollinated the F1 generation of tall plants with their own pollen. Remember that each plant was tall, but had 1 dominant and 1 recessive allele. Heterozygous. It's these guys grow up to make their own plants. Big T, little t, big T, little t. And what do we end up with? Big T coming over here. Big T down here, little t over here. Big T over here, little t here. Little t. The result was a ratio of 3 tall to 1 short. Tall, short. Offspring. The Punnett square explains this ratio. Of the 4 possible offspring, 3 have the dominant allele. 1 homozygous dominant, big T, and 2 heterozygous, big T, little t, resulting in 3 tall plants. The 4th has 2 recessive alleles, little t, resulting in 1 short plant. We can infer 2 things. Each offspring of a cross between peas with the heterozygous big T, little t genotype has a 75% chance of inheriting the tall phenotype and a 25% chance of inheriting the short phenotype. In a population of peas, the ratio of traits of the plants will be close to 75% tall and 25% short, which is what we saw in the gray and white squares. Farmers have long known the usefulness of selective breeding plants over many generations to achieve certain desirable traits in crops. Summary. Most physical traits, including hair texture and eye color, are inherited traits. Some traits, like dimples, are determined by only 1 gene. Others, like eye color, are controlled by many genes. Summary. Mendel's work predicted that traits could disappear in one generation and reappear in the next. His factor idea explained the observations he made in his experiments. Furthermore, he could predict the approximate number of offspring that would have a dominant trait and a recessive trait. Mendel's experiments uncovered 2 important principles in the science of heredity. Summarize the 2 important principles in heredity. Okay, Number 1. 2 factors, we call them alleles, determine traits. 1 allele comes from each factor. Alleles can be dominant or recessive. Recessive alleles can be present but invisible in an organism. Okay. Gregor Mendel was able to infer a lot about dominance, recessiveness of traits from his work with pea plants. Explain why pea plants were such a useful species for him in his work with regard to this topic. Okay. Pea plants were useful in studying dominance and recessiveness of traits because they generally only had 2 traits per feature, 1 dominant and 1 recessive. That would make it easier to track the data of what was going on. If there was like 3, 4, 5, 6 different traits, then you'd have such a complex thing. If you could just be like one or the other, then it sort of lines up with dominant or recessive. It's either this genotype, allele factor, coding for this trait, or it's the other one. Now think about the larkies we bred. If this population of larkies continues to reproduce sexually for generation after generation, what do you think will happen to the amount of variation in the population? Will it continue to show variation, or the amount of variation lessen? Explain. Well, in the book here, when they're talking about the 3-to-1 ratio, it said, in a population of peas, the ratio of traits of the plants will be close to 75% tall and 25% short. So I think that means that if the larkies continue to reproduce, oh my goodness, I think the variation in the population will continue to show variation of 75% dominant traits to 25% recessive traits. Explain. I think over time, the traits will match the mathematical prediction of Punnett squares. Because if you think about it, with this Punnett square here, with the heterozygous genotype, if you get 2 parents of heterozygous, they're making 2 more babies with heterozygous, which will result in 50% of the population doing this number, breeding with others and having heterozygous traits, and then creating more heterozygous. And when you have heterozygous, you get 75% dominant, 25% recessive. And once you kind of mix genetics together, if these breed together, they're going to be 100% heterozygous, which is going to make 100% Punnett squares with heterozygous traits. So, and when you mix these 2 together, it's all dominant. You mix these 2 together, it's half recessive, half dominant. So the numbers will probably tend to shake out to be 3-to-1, 75 to 25%. Okay, now we have to do Larky and possible traits on FOSWeb. This one is where you have to find these parents. Let's do Well, let's do practice mode for like 1. Okay, if these two larkies mate, which traits would not be possible in their offspring? Okay. Short legs. Oh, I need this. Oh. Short legs is big A, or big A, little a. Can they get big A from the parents? Get big A from this one, no big A from that one, so they can't have big A, big A. But can they get big A, little a? They can get a big A from that one and a little a from that one, so they can have short legs. Can they get 2 little A's? Can I get 2 little A's? You get a little A from this one, a little A from this one. So you can have both of those kinds of legs. So neither one of them are impossible. Next, can you get red eyes? Definitely you can get red eyes. Can you get gray eyes? 2 little E's. Are there 2 little E's here? No. Gray eyes are impossible. Fur. Let's see. Can you get big F, big F? No. Can't have striped fur. Can you get big F, little f? There's no big F's. So you can't have solid fur, but you can get spotted fur. Because look, both the parents are spotted. Striped and solid, impossible. Okay. Bushy or bare? Bushy, big T, big T. You cannot get big T, big T. Can you get big T, little t? Yes, you can. Big T from this one, little t from that one, little t from that one, little t from that one. So you can get either type of... So that's correct. Okay. Oh. Next, let's skip through this because we want to get to the quiz. Oh man, that's no good. Start over? Yes. Let's do quiz mode. Okay, so let's look at these genotypes here. We're looking to see if they can get short or long legs. Is it impossible for any of this stuff? Can I get big A, big A? Big A, yes. Big A, yes, I can do that. Can I get a big A and a little a? Big A from this one, little a from this one, or a big A from this one, little one from this one? Yes, I can get that. Can I get 2 little A's? A little A from this one, a little A from that one. So you can have short or long legs with these parents. So nothing is impossible for legs. What about eyes? Can I get big I, a big E and a big E? No. Can I get a big E and a small e? Yes. So it can have red eyes. Can I get a little E and a little e? No little E there. Get a little E there. So you can't get gray eyes. Fur. Can I get big F, big F? Nope. Can't have striped fur. Can I have solid, big F, little f? Yes. Can I get spotted, little f? Yes. Little f? No. So we can't have striped or spotted fur. Sad. Tail. Bushy. Can I get a bushy tail? They only have little t's, so I cannot get a bushy tail. And this doesn't tell you if it's right, but we're going to go 5 for 5, I hope. Let's see what we do. Okay, short legs or long legs? So can you get a big A and a little a? Yes, so you could get short legs. Can you get long legs, little a, little a? Yes, so nothing's impossible there. Eyes, red or gray? Big E is a red eye, so you could get a big E and a little e. You can get red eyes. You can get a little E and a little e, so you can get gray eyes. Nothing's impossible. Fur. You can get the big F and the big F, so you can have striped. You can get the big F and little f. You can get this big F and this little f, so you can get solid. You can get little f, so you can have spotted. So all the fur is possible. Cool. Bushy or bare? Can you get a bushy tail? Yes, because you have dominant alleles here. Can you get the bare tail? Little t, little t. You can get little t from this one. No little t over here. Can't get a bare tail. Next. Okay. Legs. Big A, little a. So you can get short legs, but you can't get long legs because this parent doesn't have a little a to give you. Long legs, impossible. Okay, eyes. They're both gray. Can they make red eyes? No, there's no dominant alleles. Impossible. Okay, fur. Big F, yes, yes. Big F, little f, yes, yes. Little f, little f. Okay, all the fur is possible. Now look at their tails. They only have recessive alleles. So can they get a bushy tail? No. All their babies will be bare-tailed, so that's impossible. Okay, here we go again. Short legs. Yes, there's a dominant allele, so you can have short legs, and there's 2 recessive alleles, so you can have long legs. Eyes. Can you get, yes, dominant, you'll have red. Can you have recessive? Little e? Nope. Gray eyes? Impossible. Fur. Can you get big F, big F? Yes. Big F, little f? Yes. Little f, little f? Yes. Fur is all possible. All the patterns are possible. Tail. Big T, big T, big T, big T. Can they make a big T, big T? Yes. Big T, little t? Yes. Little t, little t? Yes. All that's possible. Next. What are all these plain, solid colored larkies? Okay, legs. Can they get little a, little a, little a? Nope. Long legs, impossible. What about their eyes? Can they get little e, little e? Nope. Gray eyes, impossible. Can they get all 3 fur patterns? Big F, yes. Big F, little f, yes. Little f, yes. Tail. I see a dominant. So they can get dominant and recessive, and they can get recessive and recessive. So the tails are all good. So let's see how we did. Yes, we got it all correct. Okay, so then you take a screenshot. Proof. And you paste it into your homework. Quiz mode. Okay, and that assignment is done.